I love the simplicity of a motorcycle. 2 wheels, an engine, a seat, and a person on top not smart enough to know not to ride motorcycles. It's fantastic. And there are so many flavors of motorcycle: dirt, street, sport, adventure, touring, and also electric. Electric motorcycles have been around for a while, but they never really sell that well. Companies come and go, and they're usually more expensive and less good than a competing internal combustion bike. But I may have found one that's actually better. This video is supported by Squarespace, more on them at the end. I've ridden a handful of electric motorcycles, and while the instant torque is nice, I always come away feeling like it's either too cheaply made or too expensive or both. The Zero DSR X is well reviewed, but it costs 20 grand and weighs as much as a Harley. Livewire sells some capable cruisers, but they only sold 653 of them last year. Ford sells more F-150 pickup trucks in one day than Livewire has sold motorcycles in its entire existence. Zero makes a dual sport that's not a very good dual sport. Can-Am makes an adventure bike that's not a very good adventure bike. There are a lot of electric motorcycles, but none of them seem particularly compelling. There was one. Alta Motors made widely praised electric dirt bikes, enduros, and supermotos a few years ago. Things were going good and they were working on a second generation. When Harley-Davidson got involved, things went south and they went out of business. So there's not many good electric motorcycles and there's not many people buying electric motorcycles. Which is weird because there's a lot of cheap, lightweight, non-street legal bicycle type things. These are not e-bikes, even though some of them come with pedals. They're not really legal to ride on the street, and yet my neighborhood is filled with them. There is seemingly a huge market for small, lightweight, fun electric wheelie machines. So why is it so hard to find a lightweight, street-legal electric motorcycle in the US? But how about this one? This is the Stark Varg. The company is based in Spain, but it has its roots in Sweden, which is why the name sounds Swedish. The company was founded in 2019, just a few months after Alta went under. And just like Alta, they make a dirt bike, an enduro, and a supermoto, all of which have received pretty positive reviews. So I borrowed one for a couple of weeks and took it to the desert to find out how it stacks up. They sell a motocross version and a supermoto, but I got the enduro, which is pretty much a dirt bike with a license plate. It weighs 264 pounds and it has 80 horsepower, which is a tremendous amount of horsepower for a lightweight dirt bike. You like doing wheelies? Get this bike. It starts at $13,000 for the 60 horsepower version, and that's all you'll ever need. The extra 20 horsepower version cost another $1,000, and you don't need it, but if I was buying one, I'd get it. The bike's gauge cluster is actually a phone. It's literally a phone. It latches in securely to the handlebars and you can remove it. In fact, it's kind of the key. The bike doesn't have a key. You can lock the bike using the phone and then take the phone with you. I don't love this. I would prefer a dash that is permanently attached to the bike and then also have a key so I don't have to carry an extra phone around with me. But other than that, the phone situation is kind of nice. It's the right size and it gives you all the info you need. You can switch to navigation or have a standard dash and you can change lots of settings. There are 5 levels of power you can select from. To turn on the bike, you press and hold the power button. It will turn on and be in neutral. To get it to move, you press the down button, which puts you into level 1. You can adjust the power on all levels, so if you want level 1 to be maximum power all the time, you can do that. You can also adjust the levels of regen at different speeds. The bike will default back into neutral after a moment when stopped, so you just have to press the down button again. It is kind of annoying at long stoplights, but it seems like a reasonable safety feature. It also has crawl speed in forward and reverse, which is way more handy than I was expecting. Loading it onto the hitch carrier with crawl was so much easier than pushing it up the ramp. Honestly, 10 out of 10 feature. The Varg is a proper dirt bike. It has KYB adjustable shocks, Brembo brakes, the wheels are good, the components look well made. It has a forged carbon fiber panel on the front, and you know how I feel about forged carbon fiber, but it does look pretty good here. It's been a little while since I was on a dirt bike in the mud. In fact, the last time I rode a dirt bike on mud, it was on my way to the hospital after breaking my leg riding a dirt bike in the mud. So I'm not going to find the limits of this bike. I did bring a couple of friends with me who both race dirt bikes and they had a chance to ride, so I got some well-informed opinions too. The first thing you notice is that it's very straightforward. There's no kickstarting, no clutching, no shifting. You just kind of get on and go. It's nice. When riding, it feels like it weighs less than 264 pounds, I think partly because the center of mass is lower and partly because you don't have the gyro effect of the engine. It is eerily quiet when it's not moving, but the sound of the straight cut gears is noticeable, more so at speed. We were out at Ocotillo Wells on a busy weekend, and the benefit of a quiet electric bike became apparent pretty quickly. If you've ever been out riding in the desert, you know that there are lots of side-by-sides, and many of them are traveling way too fast while shotgunning a beer and not paying attention to where they're going. With a quiet bike, you can hear the level drone of a CVT Polaris maxed out with 140 decibels of terrible music coming from cheap speakers long before they're close enough to run you over without noticing. I mentioned the bike has 5 levels of power. I spent most of my time riding at a level with 60 horsepower maximum and 100% regen, and that was great. It's not like a 2-stroke where you have to get the motor into the power band. It just goes from a standstill. You can make it have a power band if you want, just dial it into the settings, but I don't know why you'd want to. At 60 horsepower, you can rip a wheelie down a sand wash while sending up a rooster tail of sand. 60 horsepower is more than you will need, but you have 80, so you might as well use 80. If you do use all 80 horsepower, be prepared. This bike should have wheelie control. I accidentally got the front tire off the ground a few times. On purpose, a lot of times, but accidentally a few times. Some people will see this as a drawback, but having a bike that you have to consciously try to not wheelie is admittedly kinda awesome. For just straight up fun, this bike is a blast. It handles the sand well, it eats up the bumps, it feels like a dirt bike. But it also kind of feels like an RC car. You know how a little electric radio control car will just zip from a standstill to crazy fast, basically instantly? That's what this bike feels like. It has more power than you need from a complete stop to 50 miles an hour. It's just ready to rip. You will save money on gas. But if you have this thing anywhere near its limit for any length of time, then every cent you save on gas will go to rear tires. But it doesn't always have to be turned up to 11. I used to own a KTM 500 EXC, and that thing was ready to scream all the time, and it was great at doing that. But it was really bad at not doing that. The Stark can shred around corners and accelerate like a rocket, but it also feels totally fine just tooling around town, or going slow through the mud. In fact, going slow is one of its strengths. We ran into a lot of mud, and a lot of people stuck in the mud. Some of it was fine, but some of it was real slippery, and I could just walk the bike through the mud with just enough throttle to go whatever speed I wanted. The crawl mode came in really handy a few times. Reverse was also great. Yeah, you can do a wheelie turn if you're a badass, but I'm not, so I'm going to creep backwards in reverse. I used reverse kind of a lot. If you're trying to go fast through slow stuff, it's really good. In fact, I think technical riding might be the best use case of this bike. You don't have to feather the clutch or worry about what gear you're in, and if you need to power out of something, you always can. The bike I rode had a foot brake for the rear, but you can get it with a rear handbrake where the clutch would normally be. The lack of a clutch might be a limitation for some people who are really good at riding technical stuff on a bike with a clutch. Some people use the clutch to regulate power and to rev up the engine and get a pop when they dump it. In fact, there are electric trials bikes that come with a clutch, so you can still do this. I think the added finesse you get without needing to worry about stalling the bike more than makes up for it, but your riding style may have to change a bit. I had this thing out in the desert for 2 days, and I know the biggest question most people have is about range. How far will this thing go on a full charge? Well, somewhere between 40 minutes and 6 hours. The range is highly dependent on how you ride it. I found for my riding I could get a little more than 3 hours. If I didn't spend so much time doing rooster tail wheelies and ripping holes in the dirt with 80 horsepower of electric hooliganism, I could probably get it to 4 hours. This was enough, especially because I had a solar generator with a battery in the van. Although I did have to park it on a hill to get the solar panels pointed more at the sun. The battery in the bike is 7.2 kilowatt hours, which I think is a great balance of weight and range. Obviously, if you're doing point-to-point races in the desert or longer rides, you're going to run into issues with range. You're not going to be doing backcountry discovery routes, and it would be a challenge to do something like that LA Barstow Vegas ride I did a few years ago, but I would kind of like to figure out the logistics of that and make it happen, because this would be an excellent bike for that. If you're riding around from a base camp in the desert, it's great. The bike will charge at up to 3.3 kilowatts, which will fully charge from 0 in about 2 hours. So realistically, you can ride for about 3 hours, come back, charge up during lunch, and go out and do another 3 hours, which is a lot of riding for one day. But that does now mean your base camp needs a battery bank or a generator. On the road with my suburban driving route, I saw about 55 miles of range. I did take it on the highway for a bit, averaging about 75 miles per hour, and that burned through the battery really fast. I used a quarter of the battery in 8 miles, which will give you a range closer to 30. I would say, realistically, the range is somewhere between 30 and 70 miles on the road, probably around 50 or 60. Again, this is highly dependent on how you ride, and more specifically, how fast you ride. It is a limitation for sure. You can't just throw gas in the tank and go back out. The best thing about this bike is all the advantages you get from the electric powertrain. Tons of power, no shifting or clutch, a lightweight feel. But all the drawbacks of this bike are also from the electric powertrain. Really just one drawback, the fact that you can't add 3 hours of range in 60 seconds at any gas station. But if your riding exists within the range and recharging limitations, then this is a really amazing motorcycle. The charger lives in the stand, which I don't love. I don't use the stand, so I was just carrying around this heavy stand with me just to have the charger. You can buy a portable charger, but it's an extra $800. I do have one other small complaint. Remember how I said you can adjust the power output at different levels? Well, you can only do that if you pay for their monthly Pro plan. If you don't, then you just get the preset power curves. It's not a significant drawback, but it seems unnecessary to make that feature tied to a recurring cost. This is easily the best electric motorcycle I've ever ridden, and one of the most fun dirt bikes I've ridden. It is fantastic in just making for an enjoyable ride. It will put a smile on your face. You do not need to buy the 80 horsepower version. 60 horsepower is more than enough. But let's be real, if you buy this bike, you're going to get the one with 80 horsepower. You're going to buy it and you're going to ride it around. You're going to do burnouts in the sand while you wheelie feeling like a total badass. You're going to do this 30 times and then you're going to hit a slightly dry patch and the power is going to loop the bike and you're going to flip it all the way back and rip the tail off. How do I know you're going to do this? Just trust me, I know. There are a lot of people who will just never get on board with an electric dirt bike. They will insist that the clutch and gears and noise are a necessary part of the riding experience, and also that it should be 1997 because everything was better when they were in high school. And there are people who will say that electric bikes are for girls and the gays because some people rely entirely on loud noises to bolster their delicate sense of toughness. But for the rest of us, this thing is awesome. It is a better riding experience. It makes the fun parts more fun and the shitty parts more fun. The question of whether or not to buy an electric motorcycle over a combustion one has a lot of follow-up questions. What kind of riding do you do? How far do you want to go? What's your recharging situation? If you decide that you want to accept the trade-offs in exchange for the power, simplicity, rideability, and flat-out fun that comes with an electric enduro bike, then the question of which one to buy has a pretty clear answer. I am not an artistic type. I am an engineering type, and so I am really good at making rectangles and occasionally triangles, and I am not good at making websites. Thankfully, with today's sponsor, you don't have to be. Squarespace has loads of professionally designed website templates with options for every use and category. Pick one, customize it, or even better, use design intelligence to craft your unique digital identity. Design intelligence combines 2 decades of industry-leading experience with cutting-edge AI technology to help you find the artistic side lurking under all the rectangles. Set up your online store, you can customize listings with images, videos, reviews, related products, and you can manage everything from inventory to sales and customers. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/superfastmatt to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.